I think that creating community in whatever space you choose to be in is so important because everybody is able to name themselves. So if now I'm a technologist and I surround myself with other technologists, I'm able to grow in that, right? So that I feel
Hmm.
comfortable, not necessarily so they feel comfortable that I'm a technologist because I'm hanging with them, but that I feel the comfortability and the kind of the confidence around those identities that I've taken on.
Welcome back to Impostrix Podcast. My name is Whitney Knox Lee, and I'm your host. This is season 3 of Impostrix Podcast, where we are focusing on validating small business owners of color, entrepreneurs, and folks who unfortunately are navigating employment discrimination in their workplace. Impostrix Podcast always puts folks of color first. So all of our guests are people of color who are sharing about their personal experience or their learned experience. So buckle up, let's go. Welcome back to Impostrix Podcast. My name is Whitney Knox Lee. I am your host, and I am here today with Kisha. I am so excited to speak to Kisha because we have been in touch now for a couple of months. We got put in touch through a mutual friend of ours, and since then we just kind of hit it off. I learned a lot about Justice Connection, which is we're going to hear a lot about that today. Um, and so I'm really excited for this conversation and for folks to meet Kisha. So please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. Kisha Brown, as you said, and I'm the founder and CEO of Justice Connection. We're the first Black attorney referral network in the country.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, let's just pause there before we even jump in, um, because it is so important for Black communities to know where to find attorneys. And Kisha, I went to a Justice Connection event last week, which by the time this episode airs will have been months ago. But I wanted to share that when you were speaking, Kisha, and giving kind of when you were addressing us as the audience, you talked about how Black attorneys are the ones that are going to fight for the Black community because we know what it's like. We know what the experience is of being Black and navigating these systems. And then you also talked about that the Black community is who's going to look for and employ Black attorneys, because they're the ones that are wanting people who look like them to represent them. They want cultural responsiveness. They want people that they can identify with. And certainly that's the case for me. I look for Black people in all of the services that I get: doctors, legal representation, advisors and counselors, all of that. Um, but I loved, how you have taken those two realities and created something for us. So, can you tell us a little bit more about what Justice Connection does and where you are?
Yeah. Well, you shared a good portion, so I appreciate just even hearing your perspective on it, right? What does Justice Connection look like and feel like to you? And, it was born out of my own experience as a lawyer. From the minute I started law school, I felt like people were like, hey, do you know somebody does this? Or do you know somebody does that? And I would always try to make a really, high quality referral connection going through the people that I knew first, right? And being really cognizant of how justice plays itself out, not just in the criminal sense. Sometimes when we think about justice, we think about somebody about to get locked up, right? But justice is so personal, but yet so universal, right? In the sense that justice for someone may look like getting a will and trust for their grandmother so that she doesn't have to worry that when she passes away, such and such will have her home or such and such will be taken care of. Right. Justice can also look like making sure that your favorite nephew, who has never gotten in trouble before, doesn't get hemmed up in the criminal justice system. Right. Justice may look like for others, I'm about to get divorced and be free and single and ready to mingle for a hot girl summer, whatever it is, right? Justice
Hmm.
is something that we deserve as Black people and that we often find elusive. It's almost like we can't even really touch it. We know it's there, we've heard about it, but we don't know how to experience it for ourselves in our daily lives. And being able to connect with someone who not just looks like you, right? We know the importance of just that visual representation, but it has the cultural competency, the understanding of where you're coming from, who has a sister or a mother who looks like you, who has hair like you, right? So when you talk about, oh, they treated me differently at work because my hair was short and curly or whatever have you, you don't have to explain the nuances of people trying to touch your hair to somebody who looks like you, who comes from your community. And so it's so important not just for us to be able to call on a Black lawyer when we need it, but it's also important for us to recognize that Black lawyers are so integral to our own process, our own fight for justice. Because if we're not supporting Black lawyers, and you know this better than most, Whitney, Black lawyers are only 4.9% of all lawyers. That's it, folks. Right. And so when we talk about connecting with a Black lawyer, people will often say, oh, I can't find one. Right? Where you going to get one? And I wanted to make that process easy, especially for the average person, especially for small and mid-sized businesses, and even for large corporations, because we do have some large folks who use Justice Connection. But for those who say, I want to get a Black attorney, right? Who and let me tell you, the attorneys in our network, they know the law, they know the judges, they know the legal system, they went to the best schools, they all passed the bar, they passed multiple bars, right? And so it is just about, quite frankly, the work that comes from running a firm, running a practice, that is the differentiator. Black lawyers know the work, they
Mm.
know the law, the legal system. They don't necessarily have the $15,000 a month marketing budget that their white counterparts have. They don't necessarily have family who's been in the legal business for years and years that they build off of that experience. And so Justice Connection was born out of this two-pronged need in the Black community to serve Black lawyers so that they can be promoted and strengthened and be able to better serve their community, and for Black people especially to be able to access someone who can assist them in their own pursuits for legal justice. And anybody can use Justice Connection, right? This isn't just for Black people. Anybody can use Black lawyers because Black lawyers are where it's at, right? There hasn't been any major movement in this country, whether it's on abortion rights to civil rights to government rights, whether it's around local rights, whatever it is, your local jurisdictions, Black lawyers are there doing the work, serving communities. And so this is just a way to make that whole process easier.
A good contract is worth its weight in gold. Are you a creative entrepreneur who contracts your services to others? Well, listen up, because this is for you. The Smithers Law Group has created 14 master contracts specifically for creative entrepreneurs. These contracts are industry specific, they're fully customizable, and you only pay a one-time fee. This is so much better and more affordable than speaking with an attorney who is going to charge you an hourly consultation fee, and it's so much more secure than just Googling up your contract and hoping for the best. Find your fully customizable and industry-specific contract at stulawgroup.com. Search for the contract link. And don't forget to tell them that I sent you. Yeah, I appreciate that for the reasons that you and I both spoke about. So thanks for talking more about it. Before we go further, I forgot to ask about the identities that you're bringing to this conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Man, I love that question, right? You rarely get asked how you identify yourself, right? So I identify myself as a mom, Black woman, a womanist, lawyer, and someone who knows very clearly, quite frankly, why I'm here on this planet, and that is to serve and advocate for Black people.
Yeah. Hmm. I like that. I really like that. You know why you're here. And it's so it's clear. It's clear listening to you talk about Justice Connection. So that brings me to my next question around the pivot that you made, because at one point you were a practicing attorney. And now when I first met you, I think you even described yourself as like in the tech. I don't remember what you
Mhm.
said.
Justice Connection is a legal tech startup. I
Okay.
sometimes talk more about the tech side of things, and other times I talk more about the business, if you will, universality of Justice Connection, but it is a legal tech startup.
Yes. Okay. So, how did that transition happen? Um, I imagine you had an idea. It all starts with an idea. Um, but then leaving a full time lawyering job to do a startup, not even to leave to something that's already created, but to do a startup. Did you even have experience in tech in this kind of behind the scenes world that you're now a part of?
Yeah, so no, right? Like when when I went to law school back when the dinosaurs like roamed the earth, legal tech wasn't even like a word. It literally wasn't. I didn't hear that word until right when I was starting Justice Connection. I had nothing to name the thing. And I'll tell you, Whitney, it was a game changer to be able to name the thing, because sometimes we have an idea, we have a dream, we have a vision, and we don't know if it's real, in the sense that, can this be a thing if I don't know what this thing really looks like, right? I don't have something that I can be like, that's it, I'm making 2.2 of that, right? And it was having a conversation with someone that I met on LinkedIn. Well, we met in real life, and then I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and he said, "Sure, we can get together." And I told him my idea. He told me what he was working on. He was starting a legal tech company, and I was telling him my idea, and he said, "Kisha, you're creating a legal tech company," and it was like, I am. Is that it? Right? Like, what is this legal tech you talk of? Right? And so I began doing some digging, and essentially, tech is, I mean, we're in the 21st century, right? Tech is pervasive, it is everywhere and everything. You're talking about fintech with something like a QuickBooks, you think about, education and tech, all these different intersections, and legal and tech rarely intersect. They do, because the law is old. Lawyers tend to be, when you think about the majority of lawyers, right? They're old, and the lawyers are meant to be risk averse and very conservative in general, right? We're trained sort of in that way. And technology is fast. Technology is changing. Technology is risk taking, and so few lawyers get into legal tech. Where it hasn't been something that's fostered. But I saw being able to use technology to foster and increase access to justice, right? And that's what became appealing to me. And so I began to learn more about technology and the different aspects. Now, in starting Justice Connection and in the tech world, you are encouraged to do what's known as like an MVP, your minimal viable product. So that's what I launched with, right? But there
Mhm.
are so many intentions and iterations of Justice Connection that include artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and building other types of legal technology on the platform in order to really take a deeper dive into various subjects, right? Um, and so for me,
Mhm.
I think I answered it, but like the origins, right, began very much on, and I'll tell you this part too, Whitney. I was let go from a job. My mother hates when I tell this part of the story. She's like, "Don't tell people you was let go." I'm like,
But it
right,
happens,
but it
and it
happens.
happens a lot.
Don't talk about it at all, right? We don't talk about it, especially in the legal community. It's very taboo. Nobody, when you get let go from a job anywhere, wherever you're let go, it's ego. That's ego
Yeah.
damaging, right? Somebody has told you no. Somebody has shown you the door and been like, you are not wanted here, you know? And for me, God is always kicking me out when I won't leave, right? Like, I have a hard time leaving. I just be like, wait, I'm supposed to stay here and do this thing. God's like, you were done 3 months ago, Gina. I need to go. All right. And so sometimes we get kicked out of stuff
Right.
when it's not our design, but it's for our good, right? And for me, that was at one of my last jobs.
Yeah.
It was a hostile work environment. I was the only woman who wasn't a secretary and the only Black person, and I was hired to, I thought, do
Yeah.
incredible work. And at one point, I was about to get into details, but the CEO at one point, in a meeting when I've got my strategic plans and things that I prepared, he said, "I just want you to go to community meetings and talk to ministers." And I was like, I just left running multi-million dollar agency for a whole city. You could have hired an intern to do this, right? But sometimes folks hear and see you and think that they're going to define your role very small. So I didn't stay there very long. And so knowing when it is time to go is that skill set and being okay with that. And then at that point, it was like, well, let's try something really different, right? You've now experienced a position, and I'll be very frank, it was all white men.
Mm,
And they were trying to do something that had never been done in this country before. They were trying to build a fast Japanese technology train here in the States. And guess what? They didn't know how to build no train. They didn't have the $32 billion it takes to build the train that they're putting in their federal application, but yet they all up and down the East Coast telling people they're about to build this train, right? They're in the process. Here's what it's going to take. And it was one of the, it was through that experience too that sort of gave me a little bit of that insight to be like, people don't always know what they, when they're out there acting like they know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. I know they're doing. They just out here like, oh yes, it's going to cost $32 billion, and say with a
they
straight face,
don't.
don't have a lick of billions in their bank account, right? And so, I think that experience helped me though, right, to be able to say. Sometimes I remind myself they weren't amazing. Keep going, right? Keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna have amazing days. Some days you're not, but keep going.
Yeah, you had, in talking about these folks that didn't have the billions of dollars and didn't know what they were doing, it reminds me of, something that comes up now and that is the audacity of white men. And obviously it comes up all the time, but, like, when we actually stop to think about the insanity of it, um, but how normal it is for some of our colleagues, to just wing it, and how uncomfortable that can feel for
Mhm.
us, for myself as a Black woman, how, and that's why I talk about imposter syndrome being, um, a myth of white supremacy, or a byproduct of white supremacy. Because one, we know what we're doing for the most part, because most of us grew up, most folks of color, doesn't really matter what culture, what race. If you're living in the United States now, most of us grew up with this idea that we need to be twice as good to get half as far. So we studied hard, we did extra networking, we, made sure that whenever we went anywhere professional, we looked the part, we did all of the things. Um, so like we're prepared, so that's the first thing. Um, but the second thing is that these spaces just weren't meant for us, and so when we're entering these spaces, we feel other because we are, but that does not equate to imposter. And we've got literally everyone. We all do things that we're not quite sure about. Some of us though do things, have whole plans that rely on $32 billion that we literally do not have and are making actions on those plans. And every now and then I just wonder about, like, so what if I have the audacity of a white man?
Mhm.
What would I do? Because the fact of the matter is many of these folks are successful in their ventures.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so taking that confidence, that they have, that they are, feel entitled to, and applying it to myself. What would I do if I had the
Mhm.
audacity?
Mhm.
Um, and so I I also appreciate your transparency about being let go, because that is in the legal community. When I was going back and forth, I was put on a performance improvement plan out of the blue. Um, and it was either make these changes or we will let you go. And my first thoughts were about ego and reputation. Okay, if I'm let go, who's going to hire me to be fired from this prestigious law firm? Um, but as you said, sometimes God has plans for us and does for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. Because I was unhappy for a variety of reasons, and I needed to do something else.
Yeah,
And, I wasn't gonna leave without a job, and here I am now, a two-time entrepreneur. Like, at some point was just like, what job? Like, I got skills. Let me have the audacity and, like, go do the things that I've been doing for years now, and just do them full time.
yep, yep. We're so used to the point that you made that I think is so on point is around like we're so used to just having to grin and bear it. Right? We're used to having to be. You're not supposed to be comfortable. Right? Like the notion of being comfortable or enjoying your workplace is foreign. And for quite some time, if you had the even the mere thought that that is what to expect, people would be like, "Are you crazy? Girl, you better go in there and get your money and go home and have a drink of a wine and call it a day," right? As if the notion of being in a safe place, a place that wasn't toxic, a place that nurtured and supported us was beyond our capacity, was beyond our world, right? Like we're literally put on this earth to be and suffer every day just to make money to then what? Pay some more bill. So like this notion of even I think the younger generation, right? I'm Gen X. I think not my generation, I think millennials millennial as millennials are. They have brought some good changes to the workplace, right? Millennials showed up and they were like, "Oh, y'all don't have a lemonade water fountain. How am I supposed to work here?" And I remember we'd be like, "They asking for lemonade. We bring our own water. Like
Lemonade, water
we don't even,
fountain.
yeah, lemonade water fountains." But this notion that you're supposed to be in places that don't kill you.
Mm,
Come on, because the stress, the microaggressions, the macroaggressions, they're killing us. And we grin and bear it so many times. Um, I mean, that leads me back, always all roads lead back to Justice Connection. But like,
mhm,
it's
mhm.
partly why it's so important to be able to feel comfortable with your counsel, someone that you can trust, because you got to be able to share like how you feel about these things that everybody's telling you isn't real, right? That doesn't matter. And in your gut, you're like, this isn't right. And even if the laws, you stumble across the EEOC website, or you find out that they took 40%, they were supposed to take 30% of your settlement, or whatever it is. We're so used to just swallowing that awful pill and keeping it moving. And this
Yeah.
notion of being able to not only define ourselves, how we identify, but also our spaces, right? And require everyone around us, hey, you want to roll with me? You want me to work here? You have me as a client? Then these are the standards that I go by, right? I think it's so clearly it's so powerful, even in our small ways. And I think that having, see, all roads lead back to Justice Connection, having solid legal counsel protect you and have your back is essential, because this new generation is walking out and saying, "You're gonna do me like you did my aunt Betsy," right? You're not gonna do me like you did my aunt Latanya. You're gonna do me better. So not just to say it, but also to have that person backing you up, like, "That's right, she said you better not." That's how we gonna break through, right? Because you gotta have somebody who has your back in standing your ground as well. Otherwise, it's hard. Not to say that anything is easy in life, but like we're so used to doing things alone. And so the community of folks to support each other, I think, is so important. You've created this amazing podcast, and as an entrepreneur, I think it's one of your questions
A
coming
good
up too. As an entrepreneur, right? Like, what's it like being a lawyer saying now I'm a technologist, right? What's it like being a lawyer now saying I'm an entrepreneur? And I think that creating community in whatever space you choose to be in is so important, because everybody is able to name themselves. So if now I'm a technologist and I surround myself with other technologists, I'm able to grow in that, right? So that I feel
Mhm.
comfortable, not necessarily so they feel comfortable that I'm a technologist because I'm hanging with them, but that I feel the comfortability and the confidence around those identities that I've taken on.
As someone who has also now kind of gone out on my own with my own, like, ideas and projects, I'm curious to learn from others what they did, what considerations they took when they were leaving their, full-time, I got benefits, and I got a check that I know is coming every 2 weeks or every month job to start this period of transition where literally nothing is certain. What considerations did you and your family need to make?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm laughing because I'm like, what considerations did I make? Because I was at the time that I started Justice Connection. I said, okay, I'm gonna only do a part-time job. I was director of a local nonprofit, took on as their managing director, and I said, I'm gonna do this part-time so I can do Justice Connection part-time. Right. So I did that for about a year and I said, I'm only gonna do it for like, 6 months. It was like a year and a half that I was doing that. And at the end of that year and a half, I kind of had a decision. I was like, you're going to keep tinkering away, or are we going to build this company? Right. And I realized I needed to dive in. I cannot serve two masters well. Right. And so I dove in. And one of the things that helped me in making that decision was I'm a good saver. So I had a strong savings account. Right. So I went from like part time, which was barely covering my bills, barely. And then I went to being on my savings account, quite frankly, for quite a bit of time. But I'm that friend when you go out to eat and I'm like, I'll just have the chicken, everybody else is ordering the shrimp, right? I'm like, that's me. Right? I'm ordering one drink, everybody else is ordering two. I'm like, let me just. So I was able to be a strong saver, and that really gave me um, helped me with my runway, right, and creating the business.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My husband just calls me cheap, but strong saver.
Yeah.
That's what we are. Yeah, and it's similar for us. At the point where I left, I was looking for another job, but frankly, after some months of looking while I was still employed, nothing was hitting. Nothing was
Mm-hmm,
calling me. Nothing was it. Um, and So when the opportunity presented itself that I that clearly I was not being appreciated in the way that I thought I was being appreciated, and I didn't really wanna be at this place anymore, um, it was kind of like, "Okay, God, I hear you." Like, and we had the savings to be able to support it, and, um, I had business because I was side hustling, which is so tough. But luckily, I had income streams that I could rely on. But it absolutely was a family like decision because we have young kids. I told one of my parents, I can't remember if it was my mom or my dad, but one of them was like, I don't know. You're raising a whole family.
oh yeah. I think your parents should be, yeah, I think your parents should be like some of the last people you tell usually, unless your parent is like a strong entrepreneur themselves, right? If they're an entrepreneur, then they're like, yeah, I've been waiting for you to come on over to, right? If they're not a strong entrepreneur, I mean, my mother sent me job descriptions for, a year into Justice Connection. Like, I hear Biden is hiring. Let me send you some things, right?
Mhm.
They mean well, but it can be hard in the beginning when you make that decision to turn left and everybody's like, don't you want to come right? Here's all these jobs, and people will still send jobs, right? Like I probably got a job, I think it was like last month, and I was like, yeah, I'm sort of already into something. So it's
Yeah,
just what the majority of people do, right? They work for someone else and that's their experience and how to make money. And they think, I think sometimes, at least back in the day, entrepreneurism was something you did when you didn't have a job or couldn't get a
right.
job, right? But you eventually came back over to the job market, and that's not the case anymore.
I find that I'm still intrigued by the job offers that are being sent to me or the job, not offers, opportunities that are being sent to me. And you had said, we can't serve two masters. And I agree with that. Like, for a quick second, had considered getting a part time job. Um, I don't need a part time job. I also don't have time for a part time job. Like, my projects are taking way more than full time of my life. Um, but it is, I've always worked for somebody and had steady income. So it is intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you, because we talked earlier about having a community as entrepreneurs, as folks who are maybe doing something slightly different, like legal tech instead of lawyering. Um, or maybe that's really different. I imagine that's really different, actually. But my question is, what, if any, professional support did you seek while you were deciding on this pivot as you were launching Justice Connection?
So tell me more about this professional support. I probably should have asked you this earlier, but
Yeah, yeah. So accountants, financial advisors,
gotcha.
attorneys,
Yeah.
and other, because there's so much what I just didn't know and have been learning is that there are so many decisions to make when you're starting a business.
Well,
And they impact a lot. Like, I am so intimidated by the tax code. I don't know how to do taxes. Like, I know how to do my simple little family taxes. But once you have a business and all this other, like,
yeah.
so one of the professionals that I'll be
Yeah.
speaking with is a tax person. I don't even know their names
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, I hear
Not
you.
necessarily a tax attorney, but a
Yeah,
tax preparer
yeah,
maybe,
yeah. Okay, sometimes they're
or a
accountants,
financial.
sometimes they're finance. Yeah, so when I first started, I didn't seek out any professional services or support because I couldn't afford it, like many entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
right? We're like, oh, yes, I'm sure I need all the things. So let me get some money and then I'll get to all the things, right? Just that whole notion I totally get when I meet entrepreneurs every day who are like, I've never spoken to an attorney. I get it, right? Um, Early on, I think it became very clear to me that an accountant and a lawyer were going to be critical. As a lawyer, I could lawyer my way through the beginnings, right? So I had an
Right.
advantage in that sense that I didn't need a lawyer for that. Um, but there became a point where I was like, you can't lawyer Justice Connection, right? You are now entrepreneur side and you are not lawyer side, right? And, so I meet with my lawyer um, every other month, right? And it's a great, and I highly recommend for those with businesses. I'm not telling you to go get 10 G's and then put your stack down and be like, now I'm lawyered up. It doesn't have to be like that. But at least to start with like a legal consultation once a year. Go from zero to once a year, right? The minute you have that one conversation, you're gonna be like, I need to talk to this person more than once a year, Kisha. What that was just to
Mhm.
get you in the door, right? So it really depends on where you are in your business, right? If you're just in the ideation phase, maybe once a year is good for you. If you're revenue generating, maybe you need to meet quarterly or at least semi-annually. And so the accountant piece, I'm a lawyer. We are not trained in numbers. I last took a math class
Mm-mm.
junior year in high school. Okay. So I was not trying to do anything related to numbers. And I think it's also a journey in building up your professional team for your business. Really like part of your
Mhm.
team. And if I could advise folks is to give yourself some grace during that process and to understand that it is not going to happen overnight, right? Like I have been looking for somebody to do my taxes for a minute. I've been looking for an accountant for a minute. I've been delaying getting an attorney for a minute, right? Because it is a big deal to build that relationship, to pay that money, and to do the work you need to do internally to even work with the person, right? And so sometimes it's not a good fit, sometimes you a couple of months in and you're like, this person hasn't done what I asked, or it's not worth the money, or you can't afford it, or you want to do it, all of the things, right? So I think um, we also go through many iterations of what that professional support looks like. It isn't just finding the one lawyer, the one accountant, the one banker, and the one bookkeeper, and now you're done for life. If that is it, then more power to you if that has been your experience, not mine. Right? Mine has been try this. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try this. Okay, that didn't work.
Mhm.
Right now, for example, I'm part of this bookkeeping, not club, but like this bookkeeping series. So I have a bookkeeper. Instead of having a bookkeeper, which I did have before, I've now joined her monthly workshops. So I said, okay,
Mm.
I've got QuickBooks and all that stuff set up. Now, Keisha, you're going to have to do this work. You need to know where your money's going in and out. I
Yeah.
really wanted to take that responsibility myself um, until I can because I'm making so much money that I need somebody else to carry all of my, you know,
Right.
bags full of dollars. But like until then, I need to know how much I paid to Facebook every month. I need it right, and it is work doing that. But I'll tell you too, Whitney. One of the interesting things that I've discovered in taking on more of the financial responsibility, if you will, for my own company is because it's one of those things too. When you're working for yourself, there's nobody else to be like, put your big girl drawers on and go in there and do the. No, you can avoid all the
Mhm.
hard stuff you want, right? And so, but I have found in doing my bookkeeping work, it makes me feel more like a CEO.
Mm.
You're an entrepreneur, you're doing all the things, right? You're editing, you're taping, you're booking, right? You're making the candles, buying the supply, you're doing
Right.
all the things. And then when you're doing the financials, or if you're doing some of the strategic planning, when you're doing those things, that's only you, right? And that's the CEO work that you, once I'm doing it, I say, aha, one, it takes up a lot of time. And two, you need to be spending more time doing it.
Yeah.
You need to be spending more time doing CEO work and not looking at your social media posts to see if TT and them liked it and they didn't. Now you got to go ask your cousin to go like your post because nobody likes it, right? Like you got to be focused on the CEO work. And so I think the team, when you're building that team, you're really in your CEO mode. Before that, we scraping.
Yeah.
Right, you do all the things. You're like, I don't have any money for somebody to bookkeep. I'm keeping my books right here in my back pocket. But when you start to get those that professional team, that BAIL team, as sometimes they're called, BAIL or BAL, that's when you really are, I think, starting to dive deeper into your CEO life.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. I had so much has come out of my podcast in terms of like connections and networking and ideas. And one of the people that I had on my podcast, after speaking to them, I was like, I need to schedule a consultation with you.
Totally, right? Yeah,
And
I
I'm
could have
I'm
really
glad.
definitely.
I'm glad that I did because we don't know what we don't know. And with entrepreneurship and business ownership, there's a lot that I don't know that I don't know. And so I do attend various workshops, events, webinars, those types of things where I'm getting maybe a couple of nuggets, but it's always like a thread that if I pull it a little bit more, like all this stuff like a ball of yarn comes.
Yeah,
And then I realize, okay, I need to go ask somebody about this.
yeah,
Like I need a little bit of help figuring this out. And I'm definitely still I'm at the point where I make money so I can afford some things, maybe quarterly consultations with the attorney. But definitely can't afford like a team that's on my, monthly meeting list. But I do appreciate what you said about doing the CEO tasks because I will say, as I'm learning my QuickBooks, as I'm learning, the various case management programs that I'm having, and balancing, where my money is going, I do feel like, okay, I'm doing the dang thing. Like
yeah,
I'm getting it. I'm a CEO today. And that's probably when I'm gonna start naming those days in my calendar is CEO day.
yeah.
And I've already put CEO week in my calendar for August. I have a week in August. I'm not doing any client work. I'm not doing any podcasting. I'm not doing any consulting. I am doing the strategic planning. I am reviewing my mission statement. I am reviewing my books. I am figuring out where I'm going to grow towards and then what I need to do to get it, looking at CLEs and all of that stuff.
I
Um,
love it.
yeah, it's so important because I won't do it if I don't set it aside,
Very
basically.
true. Very true. And you're not alone in that. Right? If it's not on the calendar, if we don't name it and make time for it, then it doesn't happen.
So, what's one unexpected but positive thing that has come from your transition into founder and CEO of Justice Connection?
Yeah, there's so many answers to this question, right? And I thought the one that I wanted to share was related to being a mom, a parent, right? And one of the things that has, that is unexpected, but like, oh, Whitney, I couldn't imagine if I had a 9 to 5 right now with a 4 year old, or when she was a 1 year old, or a 2 year old, or a 3 year old. We do such an amazing, like, there's no amenities for parents, really, right? I would have been fired by now because I would never, ever appear to work at 9 a.m. Some days it'd be 9:10, some days it'd be 9:30, some days it'd be 8:45. Like, they would never know when I was coming, right? I never know what I'm going to get in the morning. And so the ability to just balance motherhood has been helpful as an entrepreneur. Everything has its trade-offs, right? So there's all the other things on the other side that I won't name,
Mhm.
but the ability to take off. And I had to ask somebody, it's a holiday, daycare's closed, so I need to be with my daughter, right? Leave early, come in late, not having to ask for folks, not having to ask for vacation, being the dictator, if the decider of my time. And I was able to do that in my leadership positions, but you're still along somebody else's constraints, right? And their sort of protocols. And so that's been a great, unexpected sort of result of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I earlier in season 2 spoke to a friend, Aimee Josiane, who is a labor union organizer
Hmm.
and does trainings to help educate people about labor unions and stuff like that. Anyways, they introduced me to this idea of like owning your work. And it's not a new idea, but it's an idea that like this is the point for unions.
Hmm.
And having not been really active in unions, I didn't get that point. I didn't get that message when they told me to sign up for the union, and to pay my dues. But what I hear you talking about is, the freedom to own your work, to own your labor, to own your time. And I so relate. I just got back from my son's school because they had some dance recital
Hmm.
thing. I don't know, just a bunch of kindergartners throwing themselves on the ground, you know?
Hmm.
It was so like he loves it when I'm able to come to his
Yeah.
school. And my husband was also able to come because my husband is now working for himself. We would never be able to do those things.
Yeah.
I'm taking him we get to do like a 9 a.m. during the week swim class. Never. That was never I always got mad when I would see stuff like that
Yeah.
because I'm like, "Who
Who's
could do
three
this?"
kids in the middle of the day, right? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and as if it's a luxury, right? And that
Mhm.
only the luxurious get to take advantage of that, right? The ones who have nannies,
Mhm.
the ones who are stay-at-home moms, and those are family choices. But for those who are still bringing in income for the family, but able to balance according to what their family decides is important, right? Like, hey, you can be an entrepreneur and say, I'm only working 30 hours a week, I'm only working 20 hours a week. Doesn't necessarily have to change the whole dynamics of your business, but it gives you that flexibility to be able to, like, really enjoy your time in a way that you have ownership of, like you said.
My next so the flip side is what are the challenges? And even just with what you just said, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I got flexibility, but I sure do work till midnight just about every day. Like, I work way more now, but and
Yeah.
I like it. I
Yeah.
enjoy it, but
Mhm.
having boundaries for me has been my greatest challenge.
Yeah.
What's been your greatest challenge?
I'll say being an entrepreneur, like the challenge is, I've done hard things before, right? Like I
Mhm.
went to law school, that was super hard. I would never go back, right? Like one time, the bar was incredibly hard. I got one bar. I'm not going back. I'm good. Like I've done hard things, carry a human being in my body and bring it
Mhm.
into the world healthy. That's hard stuff.
Mhm.
Running Justice Connection, I literally have a sign above me that says, "Beautiful girl, you can do hard things."
Mm.
Because I need to be reminded, right, of my own strength to persevere. This is by far one of the most challenging things as an entrepreneur. It is all the things. It is not the one thing that you're in charge of. It is all of the things, right? And so we talk about, who's on your team and what professional support you have. When you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you are the professional support, right? I tell people all the time, like, oh, I'm the CEO and the janitor, right?
Mhm.
Like, and everything in between. Now, as we've grown, that has changed, and I'm no longer doing all of the things, which I'm very grateful for. But I don't think you can understand how hard it is unless and until you've done it yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so when people who are family and they're like, "Oh, you expanded to Georgia? That's nice." Right? Like they have no idea that I literally like dug my own tunnel, right, from Maryland all the way to Georgia, like, and I've got like the scratches and the
Mhm.
bruises to prove it. And you've got to be fortified, not fortitude. You got to be fortified inside of yourself. And first and foremost, you got to do it for yourself. Because people are only going to do it but so much. People ain't going to be able to pick you up and hold you up, but for so many times or for so long. You got to figure out for yourself how do I continue to keep going, right? Because even in the midst of all the love that we have for what we've been called to bring forth for the world, it's still hard, right? And in that hardness, there are times where you're just like, it hurts your feelings. You feel lonely, right? You wish you had more money so that you could, you wish you had more time, right? We just talked about time. I don't take time to go get a pedicure though, right? Like I take time because I'm like, all right, I gotta go we don't have any milk. I gotta go pick up some milk on the way home from dropping her off. And if I had a job, maybe I'd have to figure out how to go after I pick her up, which means we
Mhm.
get home later. So he's eating later and the whole skip, right? But I'm able to do that in the middle of the day. But it doesn't mean that I now have, 10 times milk money. So there's this incredible trade-off that you have to figure out deep, deep, deep down, right? And that has been one of the most incredible journeys that I've been on as CEO of Justice Connection, right? Is discovering that I need to fortify myself in a
Mm.
way that is for me and that Justice Connection benefits from, right? It's not for Justice Connection, it's for me so that Justice Connection can benefit. And that's something that no course, no accelerator, right, is going to teach you. No accountant, maybe your coach, right? I have a career coach who I work with on I think we meet like every other month. And so that is helpful, right? But I have a great time with her for that hour, and then when that hour is done, I'm on my own, right?
Right.
And so that's been probably one of the most unexpected challenges, right? I've done hard things before. This is a different kind of hard. And in life, we continue to meet, if we're lucky to be alive long enough, we will continue to meet with new challenges. And being an entrepreneur, you go meet with new challenges by the hour. So,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you got to be ready for it.
Before I ask you this final question, why don't you go ahead and share with us where we can find you? What's the website? What's the socials? How can people access Justice Connection or just reach out to you?
Yeah, so Justice Connection is JUSTIS connection.com. And it's spelled just is, like what is just is dot dot dot, just is connection.com. That's our website. I encourage everyone to go to sign up with for our monthly newsletter. We send it out chock full of legal insight and information, educational, empowering, access to lawyers who do all the things. That's from estate planning to family to business to car accident to civil rights. And so the newsletter is such a great source of information for people. We don't spam. And then I encourage folks to connect with us on their favorite social media platform. So it's at Justice Connection, again, JUSTIS Connection. And that's on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. We're also on Twitter, but I never tweet. That's at Justice Connect. But definitely we respond to all DMs, but we're looking for to make connections with community, right? So bringing on new
Mm,
lawyers and Black lawyers around the country. New York and Florida are next, but if you're listening and you're in Georgia, DC, Maryland, Virginia, or anywhere else, reach out to us because we have started a wait list as we grow to new jurisdictions. And if you're a member of the community and you're in a church or a mosque or a civic organization, Jack and Jill, fraternity, sorority, whatever it is, we're happy to serve your community as well. We're also doing alumni associations. We're doing an estate planning alumni
mhm.
workshop coming up. So just thinking about how you say, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, I'm going to tell my niece about it. Tell your niece, tell your family reunion person, tell your church administrator, because it's important for us to get the word out so that we can better serve our communities.
Yes, absolutely. And full disclosure, I am a member of Justice Connection.
What?
So you can find information about my legal practice, Wills for the People, on justiceconnection.com. So,
Yep.
yes,
You can go to justiceconnection.com/wills for the people.
that's right. All right. Our final question. What is one piece of advice that you have for folks who are considering making a pivot in their own career?
Yeah, being an entrepreneur, as I mentioned, is hard, and the stats are very real. Right?
Mm,
I can see why most businesses don't make it past 3 years because it is challenging. And so, what you're venturing out on needs not just be about what you're passionate about, but also what you can make money from,
mm,
right? And for some people, it's one or the other, right? They're led by the money and they're like, I'm not passionate about this, Keisha. I just know I can make a lot of money from this. Some people are led by the passion, right? And they haven't quite figured out how the dollars match up. I think both have to be really present in some form or fashion. You can say, hey, nobody is selling these amazing candles that everybody's been asking for. The market demand is there. But if you don't give a rat's ass about candles, right, you won't have the true energy and the true drive and the true inspiration to plant into your business to give it life,
mm,
right? And so there's a balance between the two, but you have got to be able to think about that revenue generation part just as much as you think about, I'm really good at baking pies, right? And sometimes that can be very, very difficult for entrepreneurs. But take it from me, you don't want to waste years doing one and not doing the other, because you won't make it, right? And if you're lucky, you figure out both of them in enough time and you can continue forward and get help, right? So one, you got to be able to make money on your passion, and two, get help, right? Like connect with um, other entrepreneurs who are willing to, just support you, whether that be in thought, word, and deed, and or whether it's an accelerator program. I didn't get much support from like my local government business supports. There are some people do, but even if it needs to be your cousin Chris, shout out to my cousin Chris, right, who is an entrepreneur, that after a while we said, you going through some things and I'm going through some things, and we're gonna intentionally meet. We meet every month to
mm.
download and talk about our business, and it's a great learning time for both of us. Even sometimes it's just a vent. You don't have anybody to tell how crazy that caller was or why that person did X, Y, and Z. And you got to get it out your system so you can focus on the next thing. So also find those supports as you're going along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank you so much, Whitney, for having me. This is an amazing platform that you've developed. You've got such a cool, calm, clear demeanor that makes listening and conversing very easy. And I know that you have blessed so many people by allowing others to be a part of your platform. So thanks for including me.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing how Justice Connection continues to grow and how you continue to grow. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me for this conversation. I hope that you got as much out of it as I did. Feel free to continue the conversation with us over on Facebook at the Impostrix Podcast Validating Space. We welcome all, and it's a space for us to validate each other as we work through work, race, and imposter syndrome. You can find out more about me or about the podcast at www.impostrixpodcast.com. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast. Until next time, be validated.